I regret that decision. Coming here and back. That's my goal for all. Alright, so welcome everyone to Effortless Freelancing and Games. I want to talk to you today about how you can freelance better for those of you who are interested in getting into it or enhancing what you already have, or even having a side hustle so you can get some of that good extra pay. Whatever it may be, that's what I want to help you with. So how many of you are already freelancing in some way, shape, or form? Okay, great. Fantastic. So hopefully something here shines some light on what you can do to actually improve your freelancing game, or maybe helps you think about something a little bit differently. Whatever it may be, I hope I can help in some way, shape, or form. And we're going to do a Q&A as well, just as a heads up. I have a puppy as of last week, so after the Q&A, I'm going to keep that puppy. So just so you know, if we're in conversation, I can get out of here because there's a puppy. Just a heads up. So one thing I want to mention, first off, is that all of you who are freelancing or want to be freelancing or doing this in some way, shape, or form is that you are actually running a business. And so many creative people forget about this part. They think, oh, it's fun. That's fine. That's great. That's fantastic. That's a good driving force to get started. It's not everything. Though, because you are actually running a business, this is actually something that needs to sustain you. I hope something that you can actually start using to food and shelter and all that sort of good stuff. And just thinking about it from an artistic point of view is great, but isn't the thing that is actually going to make this completely 100% sustainable for you. And that's what I want to help you with, making it sustainable so that you don't need to worry about things like food or rent or the basic things that so many freelancers have to worry about in the game industry. So a little bit about me. My name's Akash Thakkar, so I've done work on getting the Hyperlight Drifter, Destiny. Recently came out with Brass Tactics, which is a VR RTS that you can do in Seattle. Sound design on that. Gave 2 TEDx talks, and just released a book called Maximizing Game Feel Through Sound. And that was actually released to be a #1 bestseller on Amazon in the video games category. So hooray! It's for developers on how to get more juice from their games by using sound and talking to people like me and getting audio and making it good. It's not for audio people at all. It's for developers. Yay! So this is a picture of my puppy. Just want to. He's the cutest. His name's Thane. He's the best. He's a Pomeranian Husky mix. All right. I just wanted to throw that in there. So I'll just leave that picture up forever. Just the puppy forever. So I want to talk to you about how businesses think today. That's one of the points that I want to actually start getting into your brains, especially for those of us who tend to be more towards the creative side. I make music and sound for games, so I tend to be more towards the artistic side, but I like thinking about the business stuff quite a bit. In fact, it's probably my true focus is I'm a business person who happens to do music and sound and not the other way around. So I want to help you think about how businesses think, how to actually find great work, how to find better and better clients so you're not struggling and wondering where your next paycheck is going to come from, how to work well with clients, that's going to be a big part of this, and also contracts and other points that we have to, I'm sorry. And also, I want to mention that my way isn't the only way. I'm going to talk about a lot of methods and a lot of thoughts and a lot of empirical data that I have from doing this for a really, really long time, 8 years now. But my way isn't the only way of doing this. So some of this may be applicable to you and some of it may not be. Just take what you need, use what you want, and then tweak it and make it your own thing. Otherwise, if you follow this 100%, you may not get the same results I did. So make it your own, use these processes however you see fit. So the first thing that I want to mention is how businesses kind of think, and whether they're a small business, i.e. just us, a freelancer on their own, or they're a big, big company like Apple or something like that, is that they think in systems. Systems are just a fancy word for habits, and they're just basically things that you can reproduce over and over and over. You basically think, okay, I want to do X, what are the things I can keep doing over and over and over again, reproducible steps that I know I can do to get that result. For example, if you are a freelancer, you know that going to events like this and networking with people is a reproducible step that you can do to start meeting people in the industry. Doing things like follow-up and emailing people, which we're going to talk about, can get you more clients. Those are reproducible steps that you can keep following over and over and over again to make sure you get the same result or equal results or similar results again and again and again. So when I need new clients, I have systems in place for me specifically that help me get more work. So for you, I want you to ask during the Q&A section, tell me about your situation, or even afterwards when I'm like still here but before puppy time, I'll help you out and see what systems that you can start building. But basically, how it goes is that if you have a goal, let's say it's finding new clients or getting higher paying gigs, whatever it may be, you have that goal. Great, that's fantastic. Once you have that goal all set up, you apply systems to it, you add systems to it. So for example, if it's something like going to the, or getting fit, let's say, your system can be going to the gym 3 times a week and doing meal prep on Sunday. If it's getting more clients, for me, it's going to conferences, it's going to events like this, and being really good at my follow-up, which I'm going to talk about. Follow-up being the most important thing you can do when talking to people and meeting people. So that's part of my system, which we'll talk about, and I have a fancy little graphic to help you with that. So I'm going to dive right into money, because that's a really important topic that everyone ignores. I'm going to hit the TV out of rage. So there's so many ways to actually get paid in this industry, and it's the Wild West, which is kind of a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it means that we can actually find methods that work for us when it comes to payment, and it's a bad thing because a lot of people get screwed over and undercharge themselves over and over and over again because there aren't really many standards when it comes to being paid in the game industry if you're a freelancer. There's tons of different methods like flat fees. There's per hour or per asset, so maybe per piece of art, per sound effect, or per piece of music, whatever it may be. And there's countless others. There's profit sharing and all sorts of stuff. But all of these have different upsides and downsides, and I'll talk to you about that in just a second. But we're going to talk about how you can justify your number, and that's going to be really important to you. Now, justifying your number, your price that you're actually going to give to clients, isn't just about justifying the price to the client. That's fine. That part is actually easy, which we're going to talk about. The real key is actually being able to justify your price to yourself. Because the amount of emails I get, 150 emails a week of people all around the world saying, how much do I charge? Oh God, isn't out of fear of not getting the gig. It isn't necessarily out of fear of not getting the gig. It's out of fear of, oh no, I don't think I'm worth $100 for this 30 hours of work. It's justifying it to yourself. That is a really huge part of this. And the vast majority of emails I get are people afraid that they're not worth any money whatsoever. So we're going to talk about both sides of this. Justifying the number to the client, easy. Justifying it to yourself, maybe not so much. So we'll talk about how to go through that process. So when it comes to charging clients, in my empirical data, so this isn't for everybody, but in my experience of having, if I count everybody, if I count my newsletter and YouTube subscribers and all that sort of stuff, like 12,000 people that I've helped in some way, shape, or form, then this is what has had the best results for most of my students, is charging flat fees per project. Now, a big thing I see, especially in the audio world, are people charging per asset, so per piece of music, or per sound effect, or something like that, or per hour. Now, the problem isn't that this is necessarily objectively a bad thing to do, but the problem comes when you aren't actually increasing your rates or aren't able to increase your rates in any sort of regular fashion, which we're going to talk about. But having a flat fee is actually easier for the client, and it's easier for you because they know how much they're actually going to pay you. That's a big plus. And you know how much you're going to make. Whoa. That's crazy. What a thought. But one thing I want to mention, there is a big downside in that there is trial and error. There's trial and error when it comes to having flat fees, and we're going to go into that in a little bit. But when it comes to finding your number, what your flat fee number is when you're quoting different clients and finding those projects, there's trial and error. You're going to undercharge yourself sometimes, and sometimes you're going to ask for like $7 million for one sound. It's going to happen. You're going to slowly own in on that, and that's the downside of this, is that that trial and error phase can last a little bit longer than, say, a per hour or per asset fee, but it has some good upsides too, which is why I recommend it. So I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but one thing I want to recommend when it comes to justifying these fees, this is really important, is using a project proposal. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to show you a little template here of how I actually give clients, oh, here's how much I charge and here's why. Here's me justifying the number to you, and also a little bit to me as well. So my favorite script when it comes to actually getting paid as a beginner. How many of you haven't been paid for a freelance project yet? It's okay if you raise your hand. All right, cool, great, perfect. So, and how many of you have been paid for maybe 5 or less? Okay, great, fantastic, fantastic. So when I was first starting out, this was extremely helpful to me. Well, actually, let me ask you one more question. How many of you are scared when you're like giving your number to a client when they ask how much do you charge? Okay, so for those of you who aren't raising your hand, you're lying. It's completely true. I'm scared. I'm still terrified when I actually give my number to clients. You're all liars. So I learned who of you are liars and who aren't. So when you're a beginner, when you're first starting out, I'll give you a little bit of a script to actually figure out how much you can charge to clients. So the issue is, they say, how much do you charge? And your answer is usually, that's not the right answer. So firstly, if they ask that in person and you just met them and you know nothing about their project, don't give them a number because you know nothing about it. That's a bad move. A lot of people will say like, oh, $4. Got it. Fuck yeah. No, don't do that. If you're in person and you don't know much about it, you need time to think about it. That lizard part of our brain is going to fire, and we are not going to give a good answer. So what I prefer to do, if we don't know anything about the project, it's different if you know everything about it, you've talked about it for a while. But if someone asks you that and you just met them, say, you know what, I charge a different price per project, so I'd love to talk to you about this over email. That way you can think about it and get more details about it over email and have it all in writing and see them actually describe it to you, instead of them saying like, oh, it's an RTS, and you're like, sweet, this is going to be $40, and then it turns out to be like a MOBA that's huge and is Dota 2 and you're charging $40 for your work. You don't know anything about it, so you want to take some time, get this lizard brain to turn off, because money activates this part of our brain and we get all scared. Those of you who didn't raise your hand had your lizard brain activate, like, I'm scared even to raise my hand about this. So that's what happened. But the script, when a client says, how much do you charge, after you've done the emailing, after you've found out more details, is, so for this sort of project, I would normally charge X. So I'll talk about what that X would be. So here's my normal rate. Here's a rate that I would charge for this sort of project. Now that you know that normal rate, how much of that number do you feel comfortable paying? What this does is, one, it lets you set a number, but it lets you set a number high enough so that the client won't actually be so scared that you set a high number that they'll run away, because they know there's some leeway. This is why I recommend it only for beginners, because once you're more advanced, you can just say, here's my number. So when I worked for Disney, when I did some work on a Disney animation, I just gave them my number, because it's Disney. Their budget is question mark. So it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going to negotiate with them, because I'm not going to let them negotiate me down, because it's Disney. But for those of us working in the indie spaces, or we're newer to it, whatever it may be, finding our number involves some trial and error, which I talked about. We don't know how much we can charge per project yet. So when someone asks how much you charge and they list out all the work, we generally have kind of a tummy number. We have an idea of what that number would be in our tummy. We get some sort of semblance of a feeling. We're like, okay, maybe this would be $500, $600, I'm not sure. And when you're starting, that number is probably going to be lower than someone who's, you know, more advanced. That's normal. And when you have that kind of gut number, firstly, increase it. That's really important, because you're going to have that tummy number, and you're probably undercharging yourself, especially if you're first starting out. So let's say your tummy number says $500. Cool. Bring it up to 1,000, and then say, you don't have to always double it, because that'd be insane. But bring it up to, let's say, 1,000, hypothetically, and say, okay, for this amount of work, I would charge $1,000. Now that you know that rate, how much of that do you feel comfortable paying? That client, likely, if their budget is somewhere respectable, they might say something like, you know what, we can't do 1,000, but we can meet you at 700. Does that sound good? You just got $200 extra than what you thought you were worth. This is what that actually allows you to do. It allows you to see what your numbers where your numbers actually land without losing every single gig over and over by overcharging. Now, there are going to be clients who walk away when you start charging. That's 1,000% going to happen no matter what. That's okay. Money is a filter. It's fine. You're actually going to get rid of a lot of bad clients too when you start charging for your work. So good. You don't have to get every single gig on the plan. I got like a 50% denial rate, which is fine. That's totally good, because the 50% I do get pay well, and they're super nice and great to work with. This is a part of the process of freelancing. You're going to get turned down over and over and over, regardless of how high up you are. So use that script. How much do you feel comfortable paying when you're first starting out, so you can see where your numbers land, and as you get more advanced, then you can stop using that and just say, here's my number, when you're more and more confident, which is what I do nowadays. Oh, yes, so one thing I actually want to mention is, how many of you have been in a situation where you sent a quote over, you said your number over email, and they go completely silent and don't respond? Yeah. So this, I'm going to give you a solution that isn't going to work 100% of the time, but it's going to at least increase your chances. It's just a little bit of a bump. It's a little buff, essentially. And what this does is basically makes it easier for the client to say yes to you, because most clients are probably going to be super freaking busy, and they're not going to be able to keep on top of their email. I, for one, can't even keep on top of my email. I can't imagine what it's like for a creative director or something like that at a studio. So this is a bold move, and not all of you are going to do it, and it's scary, but for those of you who do it, email me and send me 3 words. You were right. That's it. That's all I want. I'm a simple man. I just want an email that says no punctuation, no capitalization, just you were right. And I'll know. And then I'll take a screenshot of it and put it up here for my next version of this talk. So here's what you do. If you send your quote over, they're interested in working with you, you've talked about it, it's all gone well, and you send the quote over, they go completely silent, what you do, within 24 to 48 hours, I'd give it more 48 just so they have time to think about it. Give them at least 2 days, 2 business days. What you do is say, you know what, you just email them and say, hey, I'd love to get started on the sword sound effects, or whatever, some specific part of the game. Let me know how that sounds to you. In a way, you're assuming you got the gig. And you're just saying, hey, I'd love to get started on X today. Let me know what you think. That's it. Don't mention the money in the follow-up. This is where everyone fucks this up. I give this advice to people, and they send me the email that they sent, and they're like, I'm so sorry, I charged you, I'd love to start on the sword. It's like, no, don't mention the money, you dummy. Don't mention the money, because what you're doing is saying, hey, I'm excited to get started, I'm willing to get to work on this right now, does this sound good? This does 2 things. One, it lets you know where you stand with the client, because a lot of us have been waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks for a client to get back to us. This stops that and lets us focus on other things, even if they don't want to work with us, even if it turns out they're like, you know what, this is too much, or we're not looking for that right now, or whatever it may be. It allows us to know, okay, cool, I'm not working on this project, I found out in 2 days instead of 2 weeks. Great, let me focus my energy somewhere else. Or, which is something that happens to me, not every time, but let's say 25% of the time, they say, oh, yeah, sorry, I just haven't checked my email. Yeah, go ahead, here's a check. That's what happened for me with Hyperlight Drifter, which is the most profitable game I've ever worked on. I literally emailed them and said, like, here's my chart, here's my rate, silence for 2 days. Hey, I'm going to start on swords today. Wait 20 minutes. All right, cool. That was that. It doesn't work every time, but it increases your chances. That's what I want to do. It makes it a little easier for you to know where you stand with that client. Does that make sense to everybody? I know it's bold. I know it might be scary. Give it a shot. Send me that email. I'll put it in my good folder. I have a folder in my email called Best Things, and I'll go right there. So one thing that people will ask me about is working for free. And all of us have thought about this. We've heard things like, oh, it's devaluing the industry, or it's terrible, or you're being a bad person if you're working for free. One thing I'll recommend is it's okay to work for free, actually. It's totally fine, providing they don't have any sort of budget for the project in some way, shape, or form. So, one thing I'll recommend is that if you are thinking of working for free, maybe it's a student project, or it's a passion project, or something like that, what I'd recommend you do is say, okay, it's okay to work for free on those sorts of things where they're not going to make any money off of it, they're not selling it, there's no chance of a profit share, nothing like that. It's okay to work for free, but don't work for nothing. And most people, when they work for free, work for nothing. Meaning, they say, like, oh, I'm going to get credit. It's the law that you get credit in most states. That ain't shit. Get something more. So something more you can get, other than payment and financial recuperation, is something like passes to a conference, plane tickets to maybe GDC if they're showing off their game, or something like that. It could be a skill trade. Maybe they're designing your website or your business card for you, or teaching you how to program, something like that. You can get more out of that relationship if you want to than just credit and your name in the credits. Again, that's kind of the law. So that's not a big deal if you get exposure. One of my good friends, Ryan Ike, for those of you who know him, say exposure equals dysentery. So anytime you see the word exposure, just replace it with dysentery, and it works out great. Then you know to say no to dysentery. So when it comes to simplifying your payments, this is one of the biggest things that you can do when it comes to making it so that clients say yes to you and yes to your rates. So simplifying your payments is a really, really, really big part of this. And what you want to do is avoid what's known as blank check syndrome. And what this is you send a quote to a client, let's say it's per hour or per asset or something like that, then what they start to think is like, oh, how much is this going to cost overall? What's this? oh, how much is this? Oh, and they freak out, and then they are scared of hiring you, and then they go on to someone else, or they just don't hire anyone in general. This happens a lot. So let's say, hypothetically, you're gonna go buy an iPhone, and they say, okay, this iPhone's gonna cost $50 a month. You're like, all right, cool, for how long? I don't know. Would you buy that? That's what all of you are doing when you're not using flat fees. You're scaring the fuck out of clients. You're basically saying like, just keep paying. Just keep paying. That's not enticing to anybody. It's very scary. So I'll give you some recommendations on how to get around that. But flat fees in general prevent that blank check syndrome, because what clients know, like, oh, you're gonna, okay, great, it'll cost this much. Fantastic. Great. And that will make things a lot easier and a lot easier to swallow for the client, thus easier to say yes. And funnily, someone who charges per hour or per asset or something like that, in my experience, even if their total cost will come out less than someone charging a flat fee, the flat fee person is still likely going to win as long as the flat fee isn't astronomically more, because it's just easier to know how much that's going to be in general. So as you increase your rates, having a flat fee makes things easier to swallow as well. So when you have too many payment methods for one project, that can also be a big detriment. For example, you can say, okay, I charge per asset here, and then I'll charge per hour for actually programming it into the game, and then it's gonna cost this much after one revision, and this much after 2 revisions, and this much after 3. That can get too much for a client as well. That can actually be too overwhelming in some cases, and actually cause them to look somewhere else, or just be so overwhelmed that they don't respond to you, even if you are bold and use my good techniques. So that can actually be an issue too. Now, simpler payment methods actually make it easier to increase your rates too, especially with repeat clients. So for example, if a client comes to you, let's say you charge $30 an hour for whatever it is you do, and then the next project you say, oh, my rate is $40 an hour. That's gonna activate their lizard brain, it's gonna scare them a good bit. But if you charge $10,000 for one project, and then they follow up, and you're charging $15,000 for the next one, it's a lot easier to swallow, because likely they'll be like, oh, game's over. Of course you're going to charge more. There's no blank check syndrome. They're not as scared when that rate gets increased. Flat fees make it so much easier to increase your rates, because the per rate tends to make it harder. It's because it's harder for them to swallow, and you're giving them bigger blank check syndrome. Again, this isn't in every circumstance. Some clients will prefer to pay you per asset. Some clients will prefer to pay you per hour. Some will prefer to pay you per project or per minute of music or something like that. Go with what they prefer, but if they just say, how much do you charge, and have no idea how to work with you, this makes things easier to swallow for them. So we'll talk about a project proposal now, because that helps you justify your number to you and to everybody else that you're going to be working with. So using a project proposal is really important. We'll talk about that. But it helps you justify your rates. It helps you tell them, here's why I'm charging what I'm charging, without coming across as too forceful, and you come across actually as very professional when you use something like this. So when someone is interested in working with you, you're talking over email or Skype or whatever it may be, let them know that you're going to send them a proposal. One, that just feels nice. But 2, it's also very good to show in a breakdown of what you're doing and why you're doing it and how much it's going to cost. So I have a template here. If you want me to give you this template, I totally can. Just give me your business card. I'll just email it to you. So it's nothing too special. There's nothing too crazy about this. I'm just a Moriarty type who likes thinking about all this sort of stuff. So here's just a template that I have for sound design stuff, but you can use this for whatever. So it's basically just outlining, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's the project name. Here's what I'm actually going to work on sound design in this case. And here is the overview of what we're going to talk about. Here's the goals. Here's my name. Here's just the start date and projected end date of what we're going to be working on. So that's good to know, because we all know that games take about 18 years longer than we initially expected it to take. So having a projected end date is nice, so that you know when your work is ending and when to renegotiate your contract. That's really nice. Then talking about the teams and what your responsibilities are with each other. So just getting on the same page with one another and having something tangible in their hands, so they know, oh, I gotta update the builds and send them to them. Cool, that's part of my responsibility. It seems so simple, but having something that they can refer to over and over is really nice. It's super clear to make it to other people, because even though you talk on a Skype call at first and just say, oh, we're gonna, give me new builds and I'm gonna check in on the perforce or whatever it may be, that's fine, but it all disappears when they're in work mode and working their butts off in their own kind of world, Giving them something like this that's tangible makes things a lot easier for them to swallow. And makes things a lot easier for you to know because you'll both be on the same page about what your responsibilities and what their responsibilities are. Now this is a big one, and I don't know why I put it at the bottom because it's really important. But anyway, the process and timeline. So timelines are really important. And listing them out, depending on the phases of the project and how long it's going to go, are crucial. Because you want them to know how long you're going to be working on stuff, and you want them to know when to expect work from you. So for example, when I start a new project, for 1, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how big it is, I'm just making lists, and I'm just poking at the engine and looking at the middleware if there is any, and checking the implementation and all that sort of stuff, and not much sound is being made. But they might not know that. That might not be clear to them. Even if I mention that in the Skype call, it's easy to forget that detail. This lists that out. So like, oh, for the first week, I'm just going to be recording source material. I'm going to be smashing watermelons and getting good blunt sounds for you. That's phase 1 for me. You pay me for this, you fool. So, then what you do is, you can do as many phases as you want. You can list out what you're going to be doing in each breakdown of however many weeks. For example, if you're going to go to GDC, like IGF or something like that, or a festival of any sort, what you can do is actually have it be, so, okay, we're going to prep for these festivals. Here's the breakdown of what my process is going to be with you to make sure we prep for that festival and get there in time, get all the assets in time, et cetera, so that we can have a higher chance of getting in. So breaking it down in terms of their deadlines is really, really crucial and helps them feel at ease as well. Then on this page, of course, you get your final, whatever your price is, your total estimate. And underneath it, you can have a clause for revisions. I actually do unlimited revisions, which I know people go like, what? Unlimited revisions? But that's only because I do that only with cool clients. So if like one of you comes to me and I say like, I'm only doing 2 revisions, you're not cool. You're not a cool client. But I only work with cool clients now. But I do unlimited revisions just because it's easier for me, and I've never had anyone abuse it for the last 4 years, 3 years, something like that. So it's worked out. But if you want to include a clause about revisions, then you can totally just put that right down there. And then the next part is your approach. So how you work, why you're the best choice for that job is pretty important. It doesn't have to be a giant cover letter. Don't make it a novel. Don't make it like your entire life story or anything like that. But don't just say like, I'm a good communicator and I work well. Everyone will say that. Talk about why you're doing it and what inspires you about their game. That will put you on the same page as them. That will make them actually more comfortable with working with you because you actually care about their game. And you showed that you cared and you showed your research. So that's where this section goes. They may not read it. They may not care. They might just see the number and be like, cool, and hire you, but just in case. It's a nice add-on. And this last page is pretty optional because you're going to have a contract anyway, but it's a summary of what you have. So it's an acceptance of your proposal with the client name and dates and how you're going to be paid. So it could be 50% up front and 50% at the end. It could be a monthly fee, which is what I really like to do. They just pay me X amount every month until the project is done, or for a certain number of months, or until a certain limit is reached. And then they can sign it, and then you can send them a contract to get it all figured out in more detail. And we'll talk about contracts in just a second. But this project proposal makes things a lot easier. It gives them something tangible to scroll through that they can keep referring back to, which is nice. And it's not, they don't have to dig through an email months from now, be like, what's the timelines for this? They can just refer to this PDF and look at it. It also makes you look more confident too when you're breaking things down like this instead of just a number in an email. And lastly, of course, you can do the signatures and for you and the client as well. But that's kind of optional. So as we keep going, we're going to wrap up soon-ish. Finding great work is pretty important. Obviously, we all want better clients. We want better work. We want to work on cooler things. That's really important. But I'm going to talk about a funnel in just a second on how you can actually take prospects and people and potential clients and move them through a funnel so that you can get high-quality clients without needing to think about it so much. You're not hustling as hard constantly so that you can actually just have too much work. I think that'd be nice for most, like having too much so that we can give some away to friends and all that sort of good stuff. That's a good problem to have. So this process helps you think about that a little bit better. So this is really important, but most of you do this, which is good. The people who are here do this. The people who are here do this, which is great. Talking to humans is the most important thing you can do. And as an extreme introvert, I swing as hard as you can towards the introvert spectrum. I had to learn how to do this. So for those of you who may not be as comfortable networking and talking to people, what I did, and you don't have to go this far, but when I was in Berklee College of Music studying, instead of buying textbooks, I hired a charisma coach to teach me literally how to stand in a room of people, how to look someone in the eye, how to shake someone's hand. That's how bad I was socially. So none of you are there, which is great, good for you, A+. But that's how important this skill is. I didn't buy a single textbook. Don't tell my professors. Shh, it was fine. So they didn't notice. I just looked on everyone else's. So I learned the skill of talking to humans, and I learned very quickly that that's the most important thing you can do. Obviously, your craft is important. You should be good at what you do. But when someone comes to me and says, oh, but I'm really good at what I do, why is no one hiring me? I'm like, what do you want, a cookie? Like, so many people are good at what they do. Craft is table stakes at a certain point. Like, that's assumed. There are other soft skills that other people prefer, like being able to communicate well and talking to people well and working on a team well. Those are soft skills that are really, really important. And for those of you who want any resources or books or things that I've read to turn my introvert ass into less of an introvert ass, I'll totally help you out. So one thing I'll mention is that talking to people and going out and networking and stuff is really important, even if you don't have a website or reel or a business card or anything like that. Most people will be afraid to go out and start talking to people because they're like, oh, I don't know anyone, or I don't have a website, I don't have a demo reel. Oh no, 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 big mistake. Talk to people before you have the resources ready. Because when you have the projects under your belt, when you do have the website, those people will be more receptive to actually talking to you about the stuff you've made versus you hiding in your hole and just working on something for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and then coming out of nowhere and saying like, look, isn't it great? Nobody's gonna care. Something I've noticed is that you can scroll through SoundCloud and just listen to the best composers ever and they have like 4 plays. That's common, that's very normal. You could erase John Williams' music, oh that'd be sad, but you could erase John Williams' music, write the Star Wars theme, and just put it on SoundCloud, and no one would give a fuck. It's so true. There's so much good shit out there that nobody's noticing because there's no human element to what some people are doing. That's really important. That's the biggest part of getting work consistently, is people knowing you exist. That's kind of a big deal. So even if you don't have stuff ready, start talking to people so that when you do have stuff ready, they know to talk to you, they know who you are, they trust you, and when they hear your stuff or see your stuff, they're more likely to be receptive to it. So, one thing I'll mention if you're just starting out is it's okay to start saying yes to a lot of stuff until you can afford to say no. Now this doesn't mean saying yes to bad clients or people who give you a bad vibe. You can say no to those people universally. If people suck, you can just walk away from them. That's great. But if you're not sure what your strengths are and you're just figuring things out, yes, you should probably take a lot of gigs because you want to figure out what your strengths are. You want to figure out how good you are at X or if you can do Y. My philosophy when people said, do you know how to use middleware? Like when I was first starting out, I was like, oh yeah. And I just learned on the job. That's absolutely what I do. And the thing I noticed is that there is some degree of that with literally every member on the team. To an extreme degree, like I remember when I first discovered that programmers Google everything, I was like, oh shit, everyone's a liar. That blew my mind. And the programmers in the room were the first to laugh when I mentioned it. And they have the biggest smiles right now. Because it's true, we're all faking it to some degree. So there's an extent, like if someone asks you like, oh, can you build us a spaceship? And you're like, hell yeah, like don't, there might be a line there, but it's a pretty big gap. Like, right. Yes, so if someone asks you if you know how to do something and it's within your purview to learn it on the job, just say yeah. Just say yeah. And now I know how to do those things, so when people ask me if I know how to do it, I actually know. So like, it kind of works itself out. So one thing that I'll mention, and all of you do this, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page, is that volunteering, going to game jams, going to local events, this sort of thing is really important. Volunteering was actually the biggest win for me. Volunteering at events like GDC was actually the biggest win for me. Sella knows. So it was a big deal for me because I met all the other volunteers and my network was taken care of. I didn't have to try because it was just summer camp. It was just other volunteers and I just hung out with them. it ruled. So doing that sort of thing actually helped me a great deal. But it may, your mileage may vary, but finding ways to get into conferences for cheaper, like volunteering or for free, is very, very helpful for those of us who are just starting out and want to meet more people and get our names out there and just start getting that network, because having a big, vibrant network is really important. So let's talk about that funnel. So we're going to talk about a few different types of clients or people that you're going to run into as you start networking and making friends in this industry. And one thing I'm going to mention is that this is all about making friends, right? This isn't sleazy. This isn't you shoving your business card into someone's hands and then sprinting away going like, aha! This isn't what that is. This is genuine connections that you want to make. You don't have to be best friends with every single person you meet. You may even dislike some people. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But making friends or acquaintances or actually having genuine connections is a big deal. This isn't about being sleazy and weird, because we all can detect that. Every single one of us has met the person who shoved their business cards covered in this weird slime into our hands, and we look up and it's just a log where they were. We've encountered those people, and it's just not good. It doesn't feel good. So keep that in mind as I go through this. So the kind of broadest types of potential clients that you're going to find are what's known as prospects. And a prospect is someone or a company who may need your services at some point. They don't know you exist. You have no idea if they need what you have right now. But for example, it could be a company like Blizzard. Blizzard needs artists. Sure. Do you know they need them now? I don't know. Maybe. Do you know anyone at the company? Maybe not. Do they know you? Probably not. But they are a prospect. You know that they need what you have in some way, shape, or form at some point. It's super, super broad. This is the broadest category that you can think of, and this is kind of the starting point for most people, is they know developers of some sort need what they have, but they're not sure if they need them now or whether or not they need them later or at all. You're not sure. But what comes up next, and what I'm going to talk about most, is leads. And a lead is someone who you know needs what you have. They may not know you exist, they may not know you, but let's say they are looking for a composer or sound designer. You know that they are looking for a composer and sound designer, but they may not know you exist, but you know they're looking for one. That's a lead. That is someone that you know that you probably should spend your energy on, at least talk to and meet. Next up is what's known as an opportunity, and that's someone who says, oh, we'd love to potentially work with you. We want to work with you specifically. We want to figure out if this is a good relationship. So what they'll do is say, oh, send us your stuff, or send us a reel, or write something custom for this, or show us your portfolio, or just come in and meet with us, whatever it may be. That's an opportunity. They're specifically interested in working with you, and that is a good place to be in. And lastly, you'll move an opportunity into a client if things go well. You do the whole project proposal thing, and things work out beautifully, hooray. But the thing I'm going to mention to all of you is that most of your time should be spent in talking to leads and opportunities. This is where most of your time should be spent. If you think of a whole bunch of prospects, that's great. You can find lists on the internet of companies and devs and game dev map and all that sort of stuff. And being in Seattle, one of the top video game cities in North America, this is great. You'll find a lot of potential prospects. But doing more research and figuring out if they actually need someone with your talents, getting in touch with them is a really big part of this, seeing their Twitter, checking out their game, what state it's in, seeing if they're going to festivals, that sort of stuff, is very important. And I actually use an app called Cloze, C-L-O-Z-E, that actually organizes my inbox and organizes it by humans, so all the automated stuff kind of goes to the bottom. And then I can see, okay, I talk to these people pretty often, great, and I can put them into different buckets. Like I can put people into leads or opportunities or clients. So clients have the highest priority. So if a client emails me, that email goes straight to the top and doesn't get buried by anything, which is nice. And then what I can do is every 3 to 6 months, I can follow up with my leads and opportunities pretty regularly so that I can keep checking in on them and seeing if they'll need something that I can potentially provide. Some clients, and we've all dealt with this, will be interested in working with you, but not right now. Right? We've all kind of been there at some point or another, like, oh, we really need an artist, but not now. And we may think, oh, they'll come back to me. They'll email me when they're ready. No, they'll forget. They'll absolutely forget, because they're working on their own stuff, and they will go for convenience. They're not going to go digging through their email and find someone. If someone emails them who has the right skill set after you at just the right time, they will probably pick that person unless you made a really big personal impact on them, which talking to humans helps you do. That's good. But if you stay in touch regularly, I'm not saying email them every week and just say, hey, sup. Like, don't do that, that's weird. Ugh. But like emailing them every 3 to 6 months and checking in on them and seeing how their project is doing, that's pretty important. You don't have to do this with literally everybody you meet. That's a big waste of time, but you'll see people who have the potential of working with you and that you could potentially work with. And unless they tell you, stop emailing me, this is so annoying, stop sending us your game ideas, you can keep doing this and it's actually not annoying to 99.9% of people as long as you keep your emails short. Don't send them the Encyclopedia Britannica, don't send them an entire novel on your life story, just send them a quick email and letting them know hey, any progress has been made on X game. That's it. XOXO, your name, out. That's how I actually sign my emails. I'm this close to signing my emails with a GIF of me just winking. It'd just be so good. Oh, that'd be so good. All right, so let's talk more about finding great work and networking. So, like I mentioned, you're here to actually make friends and acquaintances, not just business contacts. Now, for those of you who are more advanced, people, you've gone to networking events a lot, you've shown up to these things, and I've seen a lot of these faces before, so that's great. Just showing up at a certain point doesn't necessarily matter as much anymore. Yes, showing up matters. Keep showing up. That's great. But you'll need to do a little bit more than just showing up. You'll need to make some sort of plan and making a bigger impact with the events you go to, because probably you're working on stuff or you're just really busy. So you want to leverage your time in some way, shape, or form that makes it so that your efforts are better and better received. So, for example, you can do things like host meetings. You can research the speakers that you're going to go talk to. You can send emails saying, hey, I'm going to be at this event, to other people who are going to be there. For example, when I first moved to Seattle, before I first moved to Seattle, I sent emails to Sean Seam, for those of you who know him, and was just like, hey, I'm moving to Seattle. That's it. See you soon. And when I got here, he was just like, oh, you're that guy who kept emailing me. You're that handsome boy. Come on board, let's chat some. And he introduced me to a whole bunch of people. So letting people know that you're going to be somewhere, especially IGDA people, because they all rule, they are awesome and they want to introduce people, so that's good. And letting people know that you exist is a really smart idea before you even start showing up to things. This is making more impact off of your efforts when it comes down to networking. So this is really important. Follow-up is everything. Following up with people within 24 hours after meeting them, getting their business card or their email or Twitter, doesn't matter which method you use, but saying, hey, it was great to meet you. We talked, it was great to talk to you about X. Thanks. XOXO, winky GIF, I'm out, whatever it may be. That follow-up is really important because one, you're in their inbox, so they remember your name. That's actually a little trick I use. I follow up with people so I remember their name. Keeps it in my brain a little bit better. Also, it makes it easier for them to get in touch with you because your email or Facebook message or whatever is in their inbox. We can quickly get back to you and makes things a little bit easier. This is everything. Now, one thing I did was I wrote that book that I mentioned earlier as a follow-up tool for GDC. I didn't know it would actually sell, but great. But when I met someone at GDC that had anything to do with game feel, I was like, here's a book. Hi. I would email them and say, hey, look out for a book from Amazon. I'm going to send you that. I just finished writing it. So I wrote it specifically for the week of GDC. And the amount of work I got from that was ludicrous. It was insane. I'm still sifting through work requests, still to this day, because the follow-up had greater impact. And follow-up is literally everything, because how many of you have been in a situation where you had a stack of business cards this high after a big conference and you're like, it's August. GDC was in March. And then you slowly put it into a paper shredder and you're like, now I don't need to think about it. I never went to the conference, it turns out. Every single one of us have been in that situation where we've had too many cards and we said, I have an idea, fuck this. And that was that, right? So this helps. It's don't do that, because following up with people is great. You don't have to follow up with literally everyone you meet, because there will be times where you're sifting through the business cards, you're like, who the hell is this? That's okay, you don't have to follow up with those people. You literally don't remember who they are, Great, fine, that's totally okay. You don't have to be like, hey, it was great talking to you at the thing. Don't worry about it, that's totally fine. Now for those of you who have prefer to digitize this sort of thing, I recommend an app called Camcard, one word. It's on Android and iOS. So sorry, the Windows Phone user who's in the room probably. There's always one. Camcard, C-A-M-C-A-R-D. And what it does is it takes a picture of the business card, scans it, puts the info, it just puts the info into your phone, and then you can export it as an Excel spreadsheet and put them into groups as well. So I have like a PAX East group, I have a GDC 2018 group, I'll have a group for this when people give me their business cards, and then the next year at those conferences, I scroll through the last year's, and the people I really like, I'll say, oh, are you here this year? Easy way to follow up with people in some way, shape, or form, even after the 24 hours. I see the people who I have good interactions with, I can email them right away. And if I want, I can export it to an Excel spreadsheet and see all sorts of other details and all that sort of good stuff. And then you don't need to worry. You can literally take pictures of all the cards and then push them into a dumpster, because then you just have it all on your phone. It's really nice. Camcard kicks ass. It's fantastic. But follow-up, crucial, super important. And you do need a very big network to do freelancing pretty sustainably, and a vibrant one. People need to know you exist. It doesn't have to. You don't have to know everybody in the industry. I don't know everybody in this room. That's fine. But having a big network where people generally know who you are and it's vibrant, you're still going out, you're still talking to people, you're still showing pictures of your dog as often as humanly possible. That's really important, so people can still be like, oh yeah, we do need audio, we do need art. That person's pretty cool. Let's get them on board. It's easier that way. It makes it easier on potential clients to know that, hey, this person exists. So I've mentioned this already briefly. For those of you who are more advanced, creating something more helps clients actually work with you and want to work with you. So for example, I wrote a book because I'm an asshole. Just decided like, what if I wrote a book for GDC? I'm gonna do it. But actually educating clients through that thing that you do, thing that you made, on how you work is really important. So for example, I also have a YouTube channel with about 102. I need to write a book before I've done anything in the industry. Don't know, that's insane, that's ludicrous. But it's something to think about over the long term as you start making more and more progress in the industry. This adds to your credibility. So for example, my YouTube channel, having 100+ sound design videos, now I get sponsorship deals from audio companies and all that sort of stuff. They just reach out to me saying like, we want to give you software. I'm like, I don't see why not. Yay! And then the book, because it's catered to developers, like, you seem all right. What if we worked with you? Great, fantastic. So having something more as you progress in your freelance career makes a big difference. So create something that they can refer to and see like, oh, you know what, what did they say about working with audio people? Okay, this is cool. Like, I have had people reach out to me with that book saying like, oh, I've never thought about using middleware in this way. Can we ask you some questions? And those questions sometimes turn into work. So things like that, again, long-term stuff, but things that you can start thinking about. So there are things like blogs, YouTube videos, whatever it may be, tutorials, but you want to create something for the audience that you potentially want to attract. So if you're an audio person and you know that you want to get sponsorship deals from audio stuff, then catering to audio companies is a good idea. But if you're an audio person and you want to get hired by creative directors, creating audio tutorials isn't necessarily going to appeal to this crowd. So you want to make sure you're making something in some way, shape, or form, once you have more experience, that caters to the people who may potentially be hiring you. Now, a few more. Before we wrap up, I'm going to talk a little bit about going up brackets in terms of getting more high-quality clients, making more money from your work, but moving from just being an asset creator, waiting for the director to tell you what to do, to being a problem solver makes it so your rates go way, way, way higher. If you're proactive and saying things like, oh, you know what, I see some potential problems in your audio implementation pipeline. Let me just solve those for you. Let me figure this out. And here's what my ideas are. That makes things a lot easier for the client. They like working with you because you're solving problems. It also makes it so that you're more proactive and not just sitting back waiting for them to tell you what to do. That makes a big difference. It makes it so that people want to work with you more. Again, teaching how the client can work with you, give them something to refer to, like a video or a book or some sort of tutorial over the long term. Contracts are just going to blaze through this. Most of you know this. But this is important. For those of you working on free stuff, use the contract still. Because the reason is, it helps you determine who owns the rights to your work. This is huge. If you're working on free stuff, and you're like, I'm not going to use it because it's fine. Big mistake, because you don't know where the rights to that work are going to be. Maybe you want to keep the album rights, or maybe you want to resell that art that you made for another game, or you just want to keep using it in some way, shape, or form. This at least tells you who owns the rights to your work, them or you. If it's free and they're not making any money off it, they're not selling it or anything like that, you probably want to retain the ownership to that work that you're making in some way, shape, or form, unless you're doing some sort of trade. Now there's two main types of contracts I'll just blaze through. There's work for hire, which means that the client is buying out your work. They own it. You make music. They own it. They can use it however they want. They can put it in the sequel. They can put it in trailers. This is the most common. Work for hire is the most common by far. But it also means that the price goes up because you can't reuse that work. You can still use it on demo reels. You can still put it on your website. You can say you worked on this thing, but you can't share it with other games. You can't sell it to other people. So John Williams doesn't own the music to Star Wars. Yes, he gets royalties on it, but he can't necessarily say, I'm going to put the Star Wars theme into Memoirs of a Geisha. Like, he can't do that. He's not allowed to. He doesn't own the rights to do that. Lucasfilm owns the rights to his music, so he gets royalties, but they still own it. Non-exclusive means that you still retain the rights to your work. So it means you can sell it to other people later. And this allows you to actually lower the rates for your client. You can say, oh, you know what, you can't pay my full rate. Let's do a non-exclusive deal. You own this music, you own this sound, you own this art for, let's say, 4 months, and then the rights return to me, and I can keep selling it to other games after the fact. So you can make more money off of it over the long term, but it also lowers the rate for your client. Something that you can think about, something that you can do. So lastly, last slide, side jobs. A lot of people ask, like, is it okay? Should I go all in? Oh, side jobs are fine. It's okay, like, you're not a failure if you're doing a side job. I used to clean toilets. Don't recommend that as a side job. I actually wore a gas mask because it smelled so bad. Don't do the toilet. Don't be a janitor. I'll just recommend against that. But I advocate heavily for having financial stability as you're doing this. When you can buy food, even if you're working, at a part-time job and then come home at night and work on your thing, having financial stability is really important so that that stress isn't getting to you constantly and preventing you from producing in any way, shape, or form. We've all been in that situation where we looked at our bank accounts and been like, fuck, and that doesn't feel good and we can't produce well. How many people can produce well under those circumstances? Not many. So I recommend having a side job if you need one. It's okay, and you're absolutely not a failure if you have one. It's a good thing to have financial stability so you can be like, there's food here. Now that I can eat, let me make music, or let me make art. Turns out we need calories to live and ambulate. I just figured that out yesterday. So, as we wrap up, one thing I want to mention is that there's no one right way. I gave you some ideas today. This isn't the be-all, end-all sort of thing. Take what works for you, throw away what doesn't. That's totally fine. Send me an email that says you were right. That's really important. That's actually the most important part about this whole thing. But, now that we're wrapping up, thank you so much. And if you want to get in touch with me, here's all my contact detail. And thank you all so much for coming. We'll do questions now?
We have some time for Q&A, yeah.
All right, perfect.
Favorite project you ever worked on?
Favorite project? Hyperlight Drifter. Yeah.
Least favorite project?
Oh, I can't out. That'd be bad. Oh, yes, sir.
So here's a question. You went to GDC a month ago, whatever.
Sure.
Speaking arbitrarily, anybody went to a conference a month ago, they did their thing, they followed up, they've also done their 3 to 6 months follow-up with some other people, they're juggling a few jobs. You want to get more clients, but at the moment you're like, man, I've really gone through everything I can think of, everybody I can think of. There's no physical event for me to go to for at least another few weeks. What would you do in that space to expand your network or to find clients, whatever?
Yeah, so what I do in that case is either I'll look at maybe clients I've recently finished work for, and it's okay to ask for referrals. Most people are afraid to do it, but it's totally fine. You don't have to say, give me projects from other people now. You don't have to say anything like that. But it's okay to ask previous clients who've enjoyed your work, hey, I'm looking for work right now doing X, Y, Z. Do you know anyone who may be interested? Not give me paid jobs. Don't be forceful about it. But asking like that actually can be really useful. Even if they give you 1 or 2, that's 1 or 2 new potential people that you're talking to and adding to that bubble. If you do that with 4 clients, that could be 8 potential new people that you're talking to. So doing that when I'm kind of in that downtime where nothing's happening really, that's my favorite way to actually go about doing that. That's my favorite. If you have let's say theoretically you haven't talked to a client in like years, let's say it's been a really, really long time, what you want to do is at the start of your next client work, you're the next thing that comes your way, or maybe you're in the middle of something, you're actually actively working on something. The next time something comes up, it's okay to say, if you really like my work on this, I'd love to talk to you at the end of this project about getting some referrals. Does that sound okay to you? Just say it at the intro, and then when you bring it up at the end, they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember we talked about this. I'd love to refer you to some people. That will just keep building and building and building on itself. It's long term, of course, but it helps. And that's actually how I've gotten a lot of work as well. It's just asking for referrals and like, oh yeah, we know 2 people. They send you on your way. Not 100% success rate, but it can work.
Right on.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes. Yep.
Go for it.
Yes.
What would be your recommended way for basically turning down work while still maintaining the relationship?
Good question. So turning down the work while still maintaining the relationship. Awesome question. Say it's okay to say no. That's totally fine. Refer someone else who you think would be a good job. That way you become Google to those people, whether you're person Google to them. So I have a big name client who keeps coming to me and saying like, oh, do you want this? And I actually don't want to work on it, so I'll just refer someone else to it. And they just keep coming back to me at this point asking if I want to work on it, and if not, refer someone else to it. And you just become that fountain. You become that middle part of ideas will keep coming back to you. So you get good karma by referring someone else to it. And if you literally can't find anyone else to absolutely work on it, this is a good group to start talking to people with. So you probably know people though already. So referring people, saying like, oh sorry, I don't have anything on my plate right now, or I have too much on my plate right now, here are some names that I recommend. And they're good karma. Yeah. Yes, sir.
From what I know, first of all, thank you. What I know from you is that you don't drink.
Yes.
Most networking events do happen around alcohol a lot.
Yes, God.
So how do you deal with that? What would you recommend people do?
Yeah, that's good. So that's really good. So what because I'm a Moriarty-esque asshole, at first, the first thing is that most people don't mind that you're not drinking, but it makes it easier if you have something in your hand, right? So if you just want to walk around with something in your hand, you don't have to. Like, don't feel judgment. Like, no one's actually looking at you being like, no alcohol, huh? And those people are weird, like if they do say that. But the thing I did was I actually researched common mocktails so that I can order something classy, but looks classy, but I'm just drinking straight sugar. That's probably what I'm doing. But honestly, I'm also a child, and I drink cranberry juice at everything that has an open bar, and everyone's like, what's that? What's that? What's that red jeweled drink you have? I'm like, it's cranberry juice. And it's charming in and of itself. So I recommend if you want, you can research mocktails. That's actually a good way to go about it. If you're at like an open bar or something like that. I've never had a problem ordering a mocktail. That's totally fine. Or you can go straight cranberry juice. Such a good juice. Quality juice. Yes, Darren.
It's also cheaper.
It's also, if you're paying for it, it's so much cheaper.
I have a question about your proposal.
Yeah.
Sheet,
Yeah.
It seems like something that would be really good that you would get in your email from someone else, like a client. Would that be something like I don't know, like has that happened? Like, or do you like clients to do that? Maybe for someone looking for an audio person or anybody, right?
Right.
Would it be good for them to kind of adopt that and reverse it and say, hey,
Right.
here's the thing we're working on.
Here's the
Yeah.
that has actually happened a few times. I've gotten game design documents are kind of that,
Right.
or sometimes for bigger companies I've gotten audio design documents.
Oh,
and I'm like,
specifically?
yes, like specifically. It's not super common, but when it happens, I'm like, hell, woo, like it seems pretty nice. So on the rare times I do get it, it's pretty rad. So if you want to try it out on people, it might work. It's worked really positively on me in the past. So yeah. Yes.
The proposal acceptance section.
Yes.
That's still part of the entire project proposal?
Yes, you don't need it necessarily because you're going to have a contract anyway, but if you're doing something where maybe you're doing work on a trailer before you work on the real thing and you want to talk about payment for just the trailer before you sign a contract for the whole project, that acceptance section is really useful. But you don't necessarily need to have it because you're probably going to be sending a contract when they say like, this looks good, right? So it's not 100% necessary, it's kind of optional. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
You brought up contracts earlier.
Yeah. I'm not a lawyer, by the way. Don't sue me.
Yeah, it's not a glamorous thing, but I was curious, there are specific situations. I mean, like work for hire seems pretty straightforward. You can find stuff online. but if you're doing things like profit sharing or collaboration, things like that, particularly in games, do you have any advice on where?
Go to a lawyer. Always. Even like I have templates that I give to people, but they're for education purposes only. Always go to a lawyer. Always, because no like template, even an online thing, is not ironclad. Like it's not perfect because it doesn't know your situation. It's like lawyers for a contract don't cost, like it's so common it doesn't cost crazy money. It's not like $6,000 to get a contract or something. It's so common, and a lot of lawyers work with freelancers, so do that. Get a lawyer. Everybody. Yeah, what do you got?
Do you have an LLC?
Oh, good question. So I do, yes. I won't go into the details of recommending because I'm not an accountant, but yes. I can recommend books to you about it if you because I'm an asshole who reads too much, but you can type in on Amazon LLC sole proprietor tax, and it's 100 pages, has a cover of a light bulb. The cover has a picture of a light bulb. 100 pages, you can understand how the taxes work, and then the laws just changed, and there's a new book that says the new GOP tax law, and I read that one morning for fun because I'm an asshole. But there are good resources for you that I can help you with, but accountant will be the best resource for that. Yes?
Hypothetically, if you went to a conference at some point and didn't follow up on all of those business cards within 24 hours?
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Because that would never happen.
Is there a point at which it becomes not fruitful to do that?
I've noticed that it becomes like, it's never not fruitful, but it can become weird to get an email from, like, I don't remember this person at all. About a month is like the outside of it. But like a lot of people will give up after a week or something. That's fine. That's not a big deal because usually they'll remember you. And if you had a really good conversation, usually any time's fine. If you had a great conversation with the person, follow up whenever. But that's hypothetical though, because that's never happened to you.
Never.
So never. Okay, good.
Nor anyone else in this room.
Nor anyone else in this room. We all follow up within 24 hours. Yes. Anything else? Yeah, John.
How do you balance freelancing against your personal life?
Oh, so how do I balance freelancing and personal life? So I'm a crazy person when it comes to my calendar. Again, yeah, you know this. I call myself Moriarty because I'm like constantly thinking and just going like this in my room with like a single light bulb just swinging. But what I do is I actually have what's known as a reverse calendar. So I schedule everything except work. Not everything. I'm not like scheduling poop breaks or something like that. But I'm scheduling things like sleep, meal preps, going to the gym, stuff like that. And then I actually see what the white space is that I actually have time for work. So I have my personal life kind of scheduled first, gym, social time, this sort of stuff. Then I put work in retroactively after the fact. So for example, let's say Monday I have, I'm teaching a class, and then, or let's say Monday morning I'm, getting groceries, and then there's big old white space. Cool. So I know that day the only personal thing I'm doing is getting groceries. So I actually know how much time I have to work. My sleep is actually scheduled on there, so I know how much time I actually have to work. The issue that happens with a regular calendar is you see all this white space, and you're like, I have 14 hours to work today. No, you don't. You have laundry to do. You have dogs to pet. There's so much to do. There's so much to do. But basically what I do is I have the reverse calendar, and that actually keeps me balanced. So I actually know, and I can see how much time I'm actually spending on stuff. I know it's weird, but yes, follow up.
When you were preparing to get the puppy, did you start scheduling like puppy time?
Basically it was just a big block of like, nothing is getting done because it's puppy week. So like I knew shit wasn't happening. And I even told my clients like, getting a dog. They're like, yeah, it's fine. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, right. Eric.
Probably has to be the last question.
Okay.
So we've all had those days, like you need to do something, you sit down and nothing is coming into your head. What do you do?
Okay, so when nothing is happening, everything feels like garbage. So I'll do a few different things depending on how I feel. If I'm super sick or sleep deprived, like physically off, I will walk away. If I'm physically not feeling well, I'll do everything I can. Sometimes you just can't. But I'll do everything I can to walk away. I like take a nap or tell clients, I'm sick. I'll let them know that's okay. But if it's not something physical, what I'll do is I will trick myself in some way, shape, or form. So one thing I've been doing lately that's been working really well is I've convinced this part of my brain that all work is optional. Everything. Even client stuff. And that makes me go like, well, I might as well just do it because no one's telling me to. If someone tells me to do something, I do what I do. And some of you in this room are like that. Not everyone, but some of you are like that. Someone says like, hey, you should do this. You're like, fuck you. That happens. That happens. That's what my brain does. So right. So I'll trick myself in some way, like, you know what? This is completely optional. I don't have to do it. Like I'll eventually want to do it. And one thing that you can also do to kind of trick yourself is be a Disney villain about work. And what I mean is like, okay, I got to do this thing. I'm gonna try as hard as I can not to. I'm gonna play Zelda. Right. And you're gonna want to do that thing. Like, you are forcing yourself to do the opposite of that thing. Your brain's gonna want to do that thing. Because as soon as you start playing keep away with it, you want to do it, right? Because our brains are the worst. Human brains are awful. So doing things like that, or if it's just not coming out, I'll do it in super tiny breaks. 10 minutes, stop. 10 minutes, stop. Teeny things, just so I can chip away at it and feel like I did something. Those are some general things, but they're not foolproof, of course. Yeah, that was our last question, but I'll be hanging out a little bit afterwards. So thank you so much for coming. Give me your cards and all that too.
Thanks again to Against Gravity for hosting us today.
Yeah.
We've got Terrence in the back as representative, and there's some more folks probably joining around as well. A couple quick announcements before we go. First off, our next meeting will be fourth Monday of May next month, which is the 29th, I think?
Third Monday.
Third?
Because of,
Who's the third now?
No, because of Memorial Day.
Oh, Memorial Day is coming up, so yeah, so that makes it the 21st, it looks like. Watch out on social media for all of our event calendars and all that sort of stuff. Also, I believe we have an announcement from Livio, who represents what part of the IGDA?
The students program, like the student SIG.
Excellent.
So the IGDA is the International Game Developers Association. This is a local chapter, but most of the international communities are SIGs or special interest groups. I run the student SIG, and so we have a big community of students and aspiring devs who are not students anymore. We have a bunch of events that we're doing, like literally twice a week. We have online AMAs, like Ask Me Anything. The guy who made the music for Donkey Kong Country, and like this is like awesome stuff. And so if you want to be a part of that, just look us up or just come talk to me. Also, if you're not a student or an aspiring dev and you want to support us and you want to